Hi guys, welcome to the next session of Quants for CFA Level 2. Today we'll be starting with the second reading within the Quants content, which is multiple regression. So in the past two sessions, we've covered the first reading of Quants, which is linear regression. We covered a lot of concepts, and at the end of the class, I even suggested some case study type questions for you guys to try using the Excel file. So now multiple regression as a reading is also going to be divided into two sessions. The first one, this one would be slightly smaller because we spent a lot of time covering the basics in linear regression itself. So this particular session won't have too many complicated things as such. So this session would be slightly smaller, and in the next session we'll cover all the various theoretical parts of multiple regression. Those are mostly related with the violation of one of those six assumptions. So we have multiple violations of the six assumptions that we covered in linear regression. So we'll cover that part in the next session. Today we'll be covering the calculations and the relevant parts of multiple regression. So let's start right away with what exactly is multiple regression. So let's start away with the first most basic topic, introduction. What exactly is multiple regression? So the first heading would be a basic introduction. Now, if you remember from the last reading, this was the format. This was the format of a linear regression. So this is linear. And the reason why we called it linear is, when you quote this equation on a chart, you'll find a straight line. So we refer to it as a linear regression. Now, in case of multiple regression, there is going to be one very small change in this equation. So this is linear. If I write it down as this, this is classified as multiple regression. Now let's look at this equation, and we'll also discuss why exactly do we need this if this is already serving its purpose. So firstly, B0. Over here, it was the intercept term. Here also B0 is called the intercept. What does the intercept mean in case of linear regression? Well, in case of linear, it meant what would be the value of y if my independent variable took a value of 0. So if x was 0, intercept represented the value of my dependent variable. In this case, the meaning is more or less the same. The only difference is intercept represents value of y. So y is my dependent variable. When all independent variables have a value of 0. Now y is going to be my dependent variable. Now the next components we have, error term is same, so this is the same thing across both. So any part that is unexplained, random, or something that is happening as a difference between the predicted data as per the model and the actual data once it actually is available, that is the error term. Now we had B1, this was my slope coefficient. Over here we have B1 and we also have B2. They are also known as slope coefficients, but this time they are specific to the independent variables. So if you look at this multiple regression equation, the main component that has changed in comparison to the linear regression is the number of independent variables. In case of linear, I had one independent variable, but in case of multiple, I'll have more than one. I'm taking an equation with two just for the sake of simplicity. You can have three, you can have five, you can have 10, you can have hundreds if you want. So if you have more than one independent variable, That makes my regression a multiple regression. So each slope coefficient will now be specific to a particular independent variable. So B1 is a slope coefficient specific to X, B2 is a slope coefficient specific to Z. So this creates my equation, which is known as the multiple regression equation. Now, one of the reasons why we need this is, well, it's very logical. If we go all the way back to our example, one of the examples that we really discussed a lot is Reliance prices being explained by B0 plus B1 Sensex prices plus error. This is the equation that we covered a lot when we were doing the examples. We also had the similar thing in the Excel file that we discussed from the linear regression reading. Now, if I look logically, Sensex was able to explain the movement in Reliance, very well. It was statistically significant, and it was also explaining the movement in Reliance very well. But there is a potential for improvement. That potential for improvement comes from the fact that right now I'm trying to explain the movement of Reliance purely on the basis of movement of Sensex. The improvement is possible if I try to add more factors other than Sensex. So let's say, I'm trying to predict the price of Reliance based on Sensex and let's say oil prices. So oil prices in the international markets, I'll add another factor. So in this case, X would become Sensex, Z would become the oil prices. I might add more factors. The Reliance share price as of now is inclusive of their geo operations as well. So maybe I want to add some component of telecom industry as well. Maybe I want to see how Reliance share price is being affected on the basis of share price movement of Airtel, its competitor. So I can add another factor to try and explain the Reliance share price. So the reason why we need multiple regression is at times the variable that we are trying to predict, it might have multiple factors that affect its value rather than having just one singular value. So this is the introduction part of the multiple regression. The only thing that changes is, well, now in the equation you can have multiple independent variables. Now let's move on to the next part, which is the regression table, ANOVA table. It's exactly the same thing from a conceptual standpoint as we covered in linear regression. So we'll just quickly revise all of that stuff and then we move on to a bigger example, or rather an extension of the same example. So the example we'll cover today is, right now for linear we had Reliance and Sensex. I'm adding a third random company that may not be a competitor or may be a competitor. So we'll add a third company to see if that third company is relevant in explaining the movement of Reliance or not. So the next topic that we'll be covering within multiple regression is, well, concepts of regression. And I'm giving this heading just to, group all the topics together. Otherwise, all the topics we'll be covering here, we've already done them conceptually at linear regression itself. So there is only one topic that we didn't cover in linear regression, but that topic you've already done at level 1 itself. So let's quickly go over all the relevant topics, all the tests, all the statistics, R square, standard error, everything. Let's go over them once again very quickly. So firstly, we had the test of statistical significance. Now, statistical significance, if we go all the way back to the note that we wrote in linear regression, just because the absolute value of a slope coefficient is high or low doesn't mean we can judge its statistical significance, or it doesn't mean we can judge the strength of relation between dependent and dependent variables on the basis of that absolute value. We have to check whether that absolute value of the slope coefficient, is it statistically significant or not. So in case of linear regression, whatever was the slope coefficient for the x, the independent variable, we used to check whether that was significant or not. In case of multiple regression, there would only be one small change. This time, we'll check all the slope coefficients individually. So we'll check whether B1 is statistically significant or not. Then we'll check whether B2 is statistically significant or not. And if we have 5 independent variables, we'll check 5 slope coefficients all of them individually whether they have any statistical significance or not. So all the rules that we covered, whether it was a confidence interval for which we had an equation of B1 plus minus t distribution and standard error of B1. We'll construct the confidence interval in the same way. The only difference is in case of B2, we'll have B2 and standard error of B2. Again, this information would be given in the question itself, and T critical values you can easily find out on the basis of n minus k minus 1 degrees of freedom. So the other change is the T distribution will have a degrees of freedom n minus k minus 1. In fact, T distribution in case of regression always is supposed to have n minus k minus 1 degrees of freedom. The reason why in linear regression we simply wrote it down as n minus 2 is because value of k is 1. If you remember, k is the number of independent variables. So in linear regression, k was always 1, so degrees of freedom automatically became n minus 2. Otherwise, in reality, throughout regression, the T distribution would have a degrees of freedom of n minus k minus 1. So your confidence interval, your test statistic, all of these things that we've covered in linear regression, they would apply as it is to the multiple regression. The only change is they would be testing one slope coefficient at a time. So we'll have to perform them again and again for each slope coefficient to check whether that particular slope coefficient or that particular variable. So, if B1 was being checked, the result was that X is statistically significant or not. Similarly, when we check for B2, it would tell us whether the Z variable that we have, whether that has statistical significance in terms of explaining the movement of Y, which was our dependent variable. So whether Z has statistical significance or not in that context. So all of this exactly same as linear regression. All the information for this was there in the regression table. So regression table, again, after we discuss these, we'll cover the Excel example again, this time with another company added. So we'll cover that so that you have an idea as to what changes there would be in regression table and ANOVA table and how multiple regression is to be done. Then we had ANOVA table. Every single value that was there in the ANOVA table would be there in case of multiple regression as well. There is no change in how we calculated mean squared errors or mean square regression or the f-stat. All calculations formula exactly the same. The only major difference in ANOVA table in comparison to linear regression was that over there, value of k was always 1. But in this case, value of k could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 10. It depends on how many independent variables you have. So there would be a corresponding change in n minus k minus 1, and there would be a change of the value of k. Aside from that, every calculation is going to be exactly the same way as it was in linear regression. The third element that we have is called a p-value. Now, this p-value is also used to check the statistical significance of slope coefficient. Now, p-value is not a new concept outright. We didn't discuss it in linear regression, but you've already covered it in level 1. But then again, I understand a lot of students don't remember what they covered in level 1. So we'll cover it as if it's a new concept itself. So what is p-value? It is the smallest level of significance at which null hypothesis can be rejected. So p-value represents the smallest level of significance at which the null hypothesis can be rejected. Now, just for the sake of understanding, let's take a hypothetical example where we get a p-value of 0.01 or 1%. Now, in case of regression, the way we structure our null hypothesis, we are always trying to reject it, because if we are able to reject the null hypothesis, it means that our independent variable is statistically significant. So that individual independent variable is statistically significant. Now, if I have a p-value of 1% or 0.01 corresponding to, let's say, x, in that case, I have an idea that my level of significance, even if it is as low as 1%, I would still be able to reject the null hypothesis. Now, if I'm able to reject the null hypothesis and prove that my independent variable is statistically significant at a significance level of as low as 1%, if my actual testing significance level, the one specified within the test, was, let's say, 5%, I would definitely be able to reject the null hypothesis at 5%. So let me repeat it again. If I'm already able to reject a null hypothesis at a significance level of 1%, if the actual test has a significance level higher than 1%, I would definitely be rejecting the null hypothesis. I don't even have to do the confidence interval and test statistic. So the decision rule here is, if p-value is less than my alpha. So let's say p-value is 1%, and in case of, the question has specified the level of significance as 5%, you would reject the null hypothesis. And null hypothesis is always going to be the same, that v1 is equal to 0, because we are always testing for statistical significance. So p-value is not, in and of itself, a new concept or something entirely different. It is just giving you a third approach to test for statistical significance. So in linear regression, we covered that, confidence interval test statistic are just two separate approaches towards getting the same solution. Well, p-value is a third approach. All three of these are used for the same purpose. They will give you the exact same answer. And in my opinion, you should be prepared for all three of these in the exam. Not just to, cross-check your answer as we discussed in the linear regression topic, but more importantly, question could specifically hide certain information. So maybe it doesn't give you the information on standard error. In that case, you cannot calculate the confidence interval or the test statistic. So if the question just omits the information about standard error and just gives you p-value, you should still be able to check the statistical significance using this. So you should be prepared for all three approaches: p-value, test statistic, confidence interval. All three approaches are checking the statistical significance of individual independent variables. Next up, we had f-stat. The formula was mean square regression divided by mean square error. Now f-stat is giving me an indication of how well all the independent variables together are explaining or are able to predict the movement of the dependent variable. Mind you, so far, p-value, confidence interval, test statistic, all of these are checking statistical significance of one independent variable at a time. F-stat is checking whether all independent variables taken together are explaining the movement of my dependent variable or not. So f-stat, the decision rule is same as linear regression, that if this value is greater than the critical value you get from the f distribution, you will reject the null hypothesis. But in this case, if let's say you reject, which means f-stat is telling you that the model as a whole, all independent variables taken as a whole, are statistically significant. So if you reject the null hypothesis, in case of f-stat, it means at least one of the independent variables is statistically significant. The keyword being at least. So fstat is checking my entire model, all independent variables taken together. But if I am rejecting my null hypothesis on the basis of fstat, it doesn't mean that my model as a whole is 100% correct and all variables are also good. It means that at least one out of all the independent variables is statistically significant. Now, the reason why this is so important, if let's say on the basis of fstat, you're not able to reject the null hypothesis, that would mean that none of your independent variables are statistically significant, which means that if outright at first glance from the information given in the question, you find out that the f-stat itself is not very well, it is not going to be outside the critical range of f distribution. In that case, you don't have to perform p-value confidence interval test statistic at all, because outright, if f-stat is not relevant for me, it means all of my independent variables are also irrelevant. But if f-stat is proving statistical significance, then I would have to test all of my independent variables individually to see which one of them are statistically significant. So this is testing the entire model, and generally this is the first step. If this is proving to be statistically significant, then I jump on to testing my each independent variable separately using either p-value, confidence interval, or test statistic. The last topic that we have here is R square. So I'll just write it down over here. Fifth topic was R square. Now R square was simply, regression sum of squares divided by total sum of squares. There is one particular limitation of R square that was observed, and for that we are just going to have a small equation to correct for that. That's it. The problem with R square is, as you keep adding more independent variables, R square tends to keep on increasing, despite the fact, or rather irrespective of the fact, that whether that additional independent variable is statistically significant or not. Which means, let's say I have three very statistically significant independent variables, and then I decided to add five more which are not very significant, but R square will keep on increasing as I keep adding more independent variables, whether or not they are relevant or not. Now, to correct for this entire situation where R square is always increasing as I keep on adding independent variables, we convert this into adjusted R square. Now, the reason why we need this is, if R square, if we go back to definition of R square is telling me how much of the variation of dependent variable is being explained by my independent variables. So if I keep on improving this, it means my model is improving. But in reality, I only want a limited number of significant independent variables. I cannot add 100 independent variables just because each of them is improving R square. Getting the data for those 100 independent variables is a separate headache in and of itself. So my preference is to be able to precisely predict which independent variables are relevant for me so that I can focus on them rather than blindly adding more independent variables. Now the calculation for adjusted R square, this is a formula you'll have to remember. It is 1 minus n minus 1 n minus k minus 1 multiplied by 1 minus R square. This is how you calculate adjusted R square. So in exam, you could very well get this kind of a question as well. It's a very simple calculation, nothing complicated here. One thing that you need to know as a rule, the adjusted R square value would always be less than equal to R square. So in no case would the adjusted value become greater than R square. The institute loves to give you the trick questions where it would simply give you, which of the following is least likely the value of adjusted R square without giving you any information. In that case, this rule could be useful. So if a value is greater than the R square, you'll outright know that that is not statistically possible. Now, how do we use adjusted R square? Well, adjusted R square can both increase and decrease. So it is firstly solving the one limitation of R square. R square would always increase as I added more variables. Adjusted R square can decrease if the variable is not very good, and it could increase if the variable is good. Now, adjusted R square's value can both increase and decrease, so it solves the limitation or the problem that we had with R square. So the value of adjusted R square would generally decrease slightly if the variable that we are adding is not very relevant. And if the variable that we've added is relevant, it would generally increase slightly. So we can use this as a parameter to judge whether the variables we are adding, they are relevant for us, or are they not very relevant or not very significant for us. So this is all the conceptual knowledge you need for multiple regression. The calculation, the analysis of tables, everything is same as linear regression. So let's move on to the example. Let's move on to the Excel file. So guys, as you can see here, I have a regression table. I'll quickly show you the data set itself. So what I've done is this time I've added a new company, a third company. I'll link this Excel file in the description. So if you want, you can replace this third company with any other third company that you want. I just ended up picking Indian Oil Corporation. So again, I have the price information as of the end of day for the last 3 months of 2019. So it's 1st October 2019 to 31st December 2019. Now what I've done is this time I've run another regression on it. The process is exactly same. So if you want to know how to run the regression on Excel, I would suggest check out the last session of linear regression. We discussed this concept there as to how to do it on the Excel file. The only change from that is this time when you are giving the range for the X, the independent variables, you will select all the independent variables together. So the Excel would not ask you to feed each individual independent variable separately. You will have to just give all of them together to Excel, and Excel would automatically bifurcate between multiple independent variables. So we have, starting from the very bottom, this is the regression table. Just like linear regression, we have coefficient, standard error, and then t-stat and p-value. Now we've already discussed all of these. All of these you can try and calculate. T-stat is calculated by having the coefficient minus 0, which is our hypothesis value, divided by the standard error. And p-value is the smallest level of significance. Now if you look carefully, there are two variables. I'll just rename them for your clarity. So the first variable is sensex and the second variable is IOC. Or just to clarify further, I'll keep it sensex, and this is what we have as B1, and this is IOC, which in our equation would be B2, and intercept is what we have as B0. So B0, B1, B2, all the values are here. And if you want, the first thing is you can create an equation using this. So it would be B0 plus 437.01 plus 0.04x minus 4.52 z plus the error term. So the regression table is pretty much the same as it was. The only difference is now we have another variable here. Testing everything would be exactly same as linear regression. So the one thing that I do want to clarify for those of you who might be using Excel as per my suggestion, there is this particular notation that they have. So I'll just copy it here. If you see this notation, if you get confused, you can split this into two parts. So you can think of it as 2.55, or rather I'll remove the equal to sign. You can think of it as 2.55577 multiplied with E minus 7. Minus 7 minus 0.7 is one and the same thing. And capital E minus 7 is just another way of writing 10 raised to the power minus 7. So whenever Excel has to give a notation which is very small in terms of decimals, so if I divide something by 10 raised to the power 7, it would be 0.000000 and then something would start. So whenever that happens, Excel normally reverts to this notation containing E. So don't get confused. This p value that we have for both b1 and b2 is going to be very small because it is divided by 10 raised to the power 7 for b1 and 10 raised to the power 6 for b2. Now next up we can look at the ANOVA table. The only major difference here is degrees of freedom. This time for regression we have 2 degrees of freedom. Whereas if you look carefully, for residual, we have n minus k minus 1, which is my uh, degrees of freedom of 56. And the total was always going to be n minus 1. So n was 59, as you can see up here in the observations. So total degrees of freedom becomes 58. Then we have squared sum of regression and errors, and mean is simply squared sum divided by degrees of freedom. F stat is mean square regression divided by mean square error. All of this we've already covered in the linear regression itself. So the last part is R square, adjusted R square. Again, both these things, I would suggest, if you are practicing using Excel, try to calculate them and then cross check your values with the answer that the Excel is already given. So that will give you a lot of clarity. Also, if you notice carefully, adjusted R square value is slightly less than the R square. So the condition that we wrote is actually holding true here itself, that the adjusted R square would be less than or equal to R square. It would never be more than R square. So I hope that clarifies the example, and that is pretty much it in terms of calculations and the regression table and ANOVA table as far as multiple regression goes. So guys, that's it for this first session of multiple regression. It was a small session because we've already spent a lot of time covering the basics at linear regression itself, and we'll cover the remaining parts in the next session. So there would be only 2 sessions for multiple regression. What I would suggest right now for practice is that you pick up a lot of questions and you can solve all the questions till the part that we've covered. So multiple regression all the way till the R square discussion in your curriculum. You can practice all the questions till there. And another thing I would suggest, if you did follow my advice in the linear regression in the second session, I did suggest, making Excel files from data extracted from stock exchange itself, 3 sets of 2 companies each. If you did follow that and you do have those Excel files with you, my suggestion is, pick 3 more companies from stock exchange and just add them to each set. So now have 3 sets of 3 companies each. This time when you run the regression, run it as a multiple regression, and again, try to do your calculations and see if the answers that you are getting are matching with the answers that the regression table and the ANOVA table is giving to you in the Excel file itself. I think that would be a very nice way to start the practice for multiple regression. The topics going ahead in the entire quants now are going to be slightly more theoretical than they were so far. So far we did have practical elements, but it would be slightly less practical elements going forward and a little bit more theoretical. But still there would be occasional calculations there. So that's it for this one, guys. If you have any doubts, feedback, you can contact me. You can share your views with me. I'll leave my contact details in the description below. I'll also link the Excel file for the multiple regression in the description below. So I hope you found it fun and informative. So that's it for this session, guys. Goodbye.